Hey, this is Hallucination, or Halu for short, and this video is about whether or not you should use AMPED or Tracker while doing melee only in Warzone. I really do hope that this video is very understandable. I hope it helps you and makes you one more step closer to becoming a master in Warzone melee only. This video will be cut into portions. The first part will be AMPED. The second part will be talking about the damage of the throwing knife. The reason why I'm talking about the damage of the throwing knife is just simply because it has a key role in Tracker, and I'll talk about that later. After I talk about the damage of the throwing knife, I will be talking about Tracker, and last but definitely not least, because it's the whole point of why you click this video to begin with, should you pick AMPED or Tracker? Alright, so let's get into it. Alright, so first I want to talk about AMPED. Specifically because I feel like a lot more people use AMPED than any other perk in the third perk tier. And I think a lot of that has to do with like TKO because he uses AMPED and because he's such a great knifer. You know, people want to see what loadout he uses and use the same thing. So because I think a lot more people use AMPED, I'm going to discuss AMPED first. Now, AMPED does two things for you while using melee only in Warzone. Faster swap from the sticks to the shield. And you can use throwing knives faster. Now, the key word is use, okay? The throwing knife itself does not move faster. But with AMPED, your character readies the throwing knife faster so you can throw it faster. A big pro to using AMPED is being able to throw throwing knives and have your shield come back up much faster, so it's less likely for you to take a lot of damage or end up dying from return fire. So why is AMPED so good? Well, it's self-explanatory, right? You're in a battle royale game. You have a shield and you have melee. You're only really capable of doing a lot of damage up close. So to have a perk with you that allows you to switch back to your shield on the fly and use throwing knives a lot faster helps tremendously and is a great pick. But then it comes to the conclusion of, well, wait a minute. What about Tracker? Or other perks other than AMPED? I will get to that, but first I want to discuss the throwing knife. Now, you might be asking myself, well, why are you talking about the throwing knife? What does that have to do with AMPED and Tracker? Well, it has a lot to do with it if you like to throw the throwing knife, okay? I need to talk about the throwing knife details first because I know there's a lot of mishap about how much damage the throwing knife does in Warzone. And I want to make sure it's clear to everyone how much damage it does deal and the reasons why I must talk about the throwing knife before I get into Tracker. In Warzone, when you have max health and max plates, you have a total of 250 plates. Your white bar of health is 100, just as if you were playing normal multiplayer, and every armor plate equals 50 health. So max 250. With this information, I know that the throwing knife in Warzone, I'm not talking about multiplayer, I'm talking about in Warzone, it deals 200 damage. Whenever you're in a pregame lobby and you get the throwing knife and you throw it at another opponent, they die in one hit. Everyone in the pregame lobby spawns with 2 plates and max health. So that's the first way I know that it deals 200 damage. The second way is, if you've ever dropped in early into a Warzone game, picked up a throwing knife, and quickly threw it at an enemy before they had the chance to plate up, you would still get that one hit, one kill with the throwing knife. That is how I know that the throwing knife deals 200 damage in Warzone, and it will take 2 throwing knives to completely kill or down an enemy who has max plates. Alright, so now that I talked about the throwing knife damage in Warzone, I can now talk about Tracker. Now, Tracker is an amazingly useful perk in Warzone. So, what does Tracker do? I'm glad you asked. I'm pretty sure you didn't ask, but I'm glad you asked. What Tracker does is it leaves a red bright trail wherever an enemy goes within a really good distance away from you. This perk I love a lot, especially if I'm trying to chase someone. And let's say my ears are broken one day and I think they went to the left, but in reality they went to the right. Without Tracker, I wouldn't know. Sometimes they climb a ladder, sometimes they go to an elevator shaft or a zip line. You know, there can be a lot of instances where you're chasing someone and you lose track of them based off of misinformation that the game gives you. With Tracker, guess what? You don't need to worry about that. If they went left, you see they went left. If they went right, you see they went right. If the footsteps end near a ladder, you know they went up the ladder. If the footsteps end near a zip line, you know they went up the zip line, and vice versa, or etc. Right? So I don't know why I said vice versa. That makes no sense. Etc. is what I meant to say. Etc. All right. So that is not all that tracker does, however. Within that same range, any enemies within that range who die will have a red skull that appears where they died. This is great because it gives you the information that you need to know that, okay, look, they died in a specific area. How do I want to play this? Is this a safe push? Should I back up? Should I flank? Should I get the high ground? You see, it allows you to give more information because of where that person died, so you can plan your next attack and your next move better. And last thing that I want to talk about Tracker is that it's really, really you're not going to see it be countered a lot, is what I'm trying to say. Why do I say that? Because the counter to Tracker is cold-blooded. But here's the thing. This is Warzone, okay? This is just Explosion Haven, right? Explosion, 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 explosion. C4s, kind of, not really, got nerfed to hell. But C4, Simtex, all these things, right? They're so prevalent and so common in Warzone. Not running EOD is kind of like a death sentence. It sucks that you have to pretty much use a specific perk all the time, but that's just how it is. So many people use explosives in their loadouts. So if you get into a very bad situation, it's much better if you have EOD to combat it than another perk, such as Cold-Blooded, which is the counter to Tracker. The reason why a lot of people use Cold-Blooded to begin with is the beginning of Warzone, when thermal optics were like the meta, right? But now that that's not the meta anymore, there's not really many uses for Cold-Blooded. So not only does Tracker help you in chasing down enemies and giving you information on where enemies could be, it's also very, very rare to come across someone who has the counter to Tracker, which is Cold-Blooded. So that's just the amazing benefits to using Tracker. All right, so now that I've talked about Tracker, here comes down to a big con with using any perk that's not amped, okay? This is the entire reasoning to why I even brought up the throwing knife damage and why I need to explain why it takes 2 throwing knives to completely kill an enemy or down an enemy, depending on if they have self-revive or teammates or not, if they have max plates, okay? You can't just go around willy-nilly with a throwing knife without amped and expect to do really well in engagements, especially close range, okay? That's just not the fact of the matter. It sucks, but that's just how it is. If you watch These Knives Only and you watch his Warzone videos, lots of times he's in a heated engagement where his opponent is shooting at his shield, but he'll still go for a throwing knife. He'll go for the throwing knife, he'll get the throwing knife hit, his shield will come back up, and he probably won't take that much damage. And I say probably because he'll either not take any damage or take a little bit of damage, right? And he'll be good. But if me, someone who uses Tracker, was in that same engagement where I'm going to get someone who's still shooting at my shield and I try to go for a throwing knife, I put myself in a very bad situation. Let's say I do hit the throwing knife, great, but the mass majority of the time your opponent is going to have max plates. So that throwing knife is not going to be good enough. It's going to take another one to kill them. Let's say I miss the throwing knife. Regardless if I hit them and they don't die or if I miss, the fact of the matter is I leave myself greatly exposed. The amount of time it takes for me to throw my throwing knife and have my shield come back in front of me without amped is so slow that I could take so much damage, I could end up dying. Just because I tried to go for a throwing knife, okay? So the reason why I even brought up the throwing knife before talking about Tracker is that if you are not using amped, you need to be very smart in when you throw your throwing knife. If you watch me play, the vast majority of the times that I use my throwing knife when I'm using Tracker is to finish an enemy off that's been downed, to if I stun an enemy and they run away, or they try to run away rather, but I'm not close enough to reach them with my sticks, then I'll use my throwing knife for them. Or if I know that my opponent is damaged and I shield bash them so they're one hit away from dying from the throwing knife, then I'll throw it, okay? It sucks. I really wish I could go in a lot more engagements that are close range and just use the throwing knife. But if I don't have amped, I leave myself very vulnerable if I go for risky plays such as throwing my throwing knife without amped. So I had to discuss that and bring that up. So please keep that in mind. If you don't use amped, please keep in mind that you need to be smart when you use your throwing knives.
Alright, so I wanted to take some time to show you the reasoning behind why I personally don't use amped. I use amped sometimes, but I mostly main tracker, and I don't feel like I need amped, and it all comes down to my movement, my character movement. If you didn't know, I play on claw, and if you don't know what claw is, it's a style of how you hold your controller. And if you want to learn more about it, there's plenty of YouTube videos on it, and I only use claw with my right hand, I don't use claw with my left. If you watch a lot of my videos, you see me do this a lot. I slide, and while I slide, I press triangle to switch to my shield, and I jump. Show it again. Now, I went over here and sprayed some hearts on the ground. So pretend that there's an enemy standing right here, okay? Right on top of those hearts. So let's say I'm in a Warzone game, right? And I have my sticks out, and I turn the corner, and I see a dude there, right? Here's how I move. So I'm running. I see a dude. Oh! Slide to cover. Let me go to the other side. I'm running. Oh, I see a dude. Notice that whenever I finish my movement, I always crouch. Always remember to crouch. You don't want to get shot in the foot, okay? You don't want to get shot in the foot. Let's say you're running and you see an enemy in front of you. Do not, I repeat, do not switch your weapon by going directly in front of them. That might be common sense, but again, if there's an enemy where those hearts are and I run straight at them and I try to do this, there's a lot of bullets that they could put into me before my shield comes out and leave me in a very bad spot. You always want to try to find cover, and if there's no cover, you always want to try to at least slide in one direction or the other to be as hard as a target to hit as possible. So let's say there was no cover right here and there's an enemy right there, okay? Running. Oh, there's no cover. I'm still going to slide in one of the directions, and I'm going to, once again, slide, switch, jump, crouch. Slide, switch, jump, crouch. And before I finish this portion, if I get shot from behind, do like that. So, because I already have the movement down to be able to take minimal damage from switching from my Kali sticks to my shield without amped, you see, I don't really need amped that much, you know what I mean? If I can already move in a way to the point where I don't need amped to protect myself, having amped selected in my loadout just feels like a waste of a perk slot.
So now we made it to the end of the video, and time to answer the big question for you. Should you use amped or tracker? We've already discussed that you can be a master in Warzone melee only, regardless of if you use amped or not. But to help you, eliminate the other options to pick the best option for you, here's my suggestion, okay? When it comes to amped, I think you should use amped if you are a person that is good with the throwing knives, wants to use a lot of throwing knives, and likes to get into a lot of engagements and be very aggressive. If you are that sort of player, I honestly think you should pick amped. Now, when it comes to tracker or using any other perk that is not amped, I think this perk will be best for you if you already have movement down in the game where you can take away a lot of damage from you simply by how you move. If you are a player in Warzone that is really comfortable with sliding and swapping your weapon at the same time, I honestly don't think amped is that great a perk for you. If you're already good at dodging a lot of bullets or taking less damage from switching from your Kali sticks to your shield, it doesn't really make much sense using a perk that does that for you. You see what I mean? Now, again, it does suck because the reality of it is I can't use throwing knives as aggressively compared to an amped player when I use tracker or battle hardened or whatever it might be. But the aid with tracker and the benefits that tracker gives me, it's much more of a compensation for it. It's a perfect compensation for it. Okay, I can't use throwing knives as much, but at least when it comes to engagements in Warzone, I can be a lot more accurate and precise in where my enemies are. Not just the person I'm chasing, but if there's people around me, especially based off of red skulls. If there's 3 people in the building and I'm one of those people, and a person I'm chasing dies, oh, well, look, I can see a red skull there. I know there's another person there. Now I can think about it and say, okay, do I want to push that? Do I not want to push that? This person could be hiding here. They could be hiding there. Maybe I want to flank. You see, when you have information like that, you can plan your move a lot better and easier. Don't think you can't be aggressive with tracker. Oh, you can. Okay, you can be extremely aggressive with tracker or battle hardened, right? But you have to be able to have the movement that's needed in order to keep you alive from switching from your Kali sticks or whatever melee weapon of your choice to your shield. And this is just a little side note. Sometimes I will use amped over tracker if I'm playing with other people. I don't have to. Again, personally, I still play better with tracker. But sometimes if I'm playing duos or trios and rarely quads, rarely do I ever do quads or find enough people to do quads. But whenever the situation comes up where I play with other people, sometimes I would rather pick amped than tracker just so that I can help my teammates more by being able to be more effective on the war zone, throwing more throwing knives, being more, you know, aggressive in the sense of I don't have to worry about having to slide every time I need to switch to my shield. I don't need to worry about jumping every time I need to switch to my shield. I don't need to worry about having to dodge and be Neo in the Matrix every time I need to go back to my shield. So I can be more effective with my team. You see what I mean? So in situations like that, I would rather pick amped over tracker. But even if I'm playing duos and especially if I'm playing solos, personally for me, I would rather run tracker. So yeah, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of amped and tracker and why you should use amped or tracker or any other perk that's not amped in Warzone. I really hope that my explanations were clear. I hope I wasn't confusing anyone. The last thing I want is to make a video on which you should rather pick and not be clear on which one you should rather pick, right? And I don't want to make a video like a lot of other videos. I'm not saying particular because it's not really particular, but there's been lots of times in life, regardless of the matter, right, where I try to find a video and it says, oh, which of this should you use? Oh, should you use that? And should you use this? And then you watch the video and it's like, just use whichever one's better for you. Well, if I knew which one was better for me, I wouldn't watch the video to begin with. You know what I'm saying? I really wanted to explain and go into depth of my reasoning to why you should use amped and why you should use tracker or a perk that's not amped. So, again, I hope everything was clear, and if it did, and if it was rather, I'm glad. I'm really glad I helped you out. So, this has been Hallucination, or Halu for short, and yeah, see you next time.